Welcome back to For Black Mompreneurs, the podcast where we celebrate the intersection of motherhood and entrepreneurship in the Black community. I'm your host, Femi Lewis, and today we're diving deep into something that's been on my heart, the concept of purposeful motherhood and how it becomes the foundation for everything we do as entrepreneurs. As Black mothers, we carry a great deal. We're building businesses, we're raising our babies, and often carrying the weight of generational expectations. But what if I told you that the way you show up as a mother with intention, with purpose, is actually going to be your greatest entrepreneurial superpower? Today, we're exploring purposeful parenting, how it differs from other parenting styles you might have heard about, and most importantly, how it creates the mindset and skills that make you unstoppable in business. And finally, how does it provide space for your children to cultivate an entrepreneurial mindset? So grab your coffee, your tea, or whatever it is that's filling up your cup these days, and let's get into it. Recently, a know-it-all family member remarked that my children have a lot to say and are always doing something, that my husband and I, especially me, spend way too much of our time talking to our children when we could just tell them what to do and make them get it done. She called me a gentle parent. Recently, a know-it-all family member remarked that my children have a lot to say and are always doing something, that my husband and I, especially me, spent way too much time talking to our children when we could just tell them what to do and make them get it done. She called me a gentle parent who needed to start reading the Bible and read Proverbs 13:24. Spare the rod, spoil the child. I counted to 20 twice before I decided to respond. And here's what I told her. There's nothing wrong with gentle parenting if that's the route you want to take. I, however, am a purposeful parent. Funny thing, I didn't even know that the term was a thing. In that moment, I just knew two things were certain. First, that as a mother, I operated out of intentionality always. I know that what I want for my children is to be able to do and give them the space to learn and grow. And I needed this nosy family member. That's the second thing I needed. I needed this nosy family member to mind her business and stay out of my face. However, it turns out that purposeful parenting is a significant concept and it's a game changer for us as entrepreneurs. Let's start with the foundation. What exactly is purposeful parenting? And sis, let me tell you, this is not just another parenting trend. This is about showing up with deliberateness in every single thing, every interaction with your children. Purposeful parenting is parenting with clear intention, rooted in your values and focused on raising children who understand their worth, their potential, and their responsibility to themselves and their community. It's about being deliberate in how you guide, teach, and model behavior for your children. Now, I don't know about you, but everything I teach my children, I do for a reason. Because I want them in specific programs, a new school, to know how to navigate new spaces and people with confidence. And I feel this strongly because I stand on the shoulders of women who came before me who might have said things like, because I said so, because that was what they were taught that parents did, but they also envision me in the world doing great things. So who would I be not to pass on a legacy filled with being of service to the community, being compassionate and caring, and always in prayer? Now you might be thinking, okay, but how is this different from any other parenting style, right? It seems like it could be gentle parenting, like my nosy family member, or maybe a little authoritative in some ways. And that's a great question. So let's break this down real quick. Authoritative parenting is that style where you set clear boundaries and expectations while also providing warmth and support. Very much like purposeful parenting. It's like you think of it as firm but loving. You have rules, you have consequences, and you explain the why behind them. This approach has been shown to produce confident, self-regulated children. There's another parenting style, authoritarian, that is sometimes confused with authoritative parenting. And I thought it was important to define it both and make the distinction. Authoritarian parenting is being focused on discipline. It's relying less on communication and understanding or more on punishment and the adage, because I said so. There's also gentle parenting that, a lot like authoritative and purposeful parenting, focuses on respect and understanding. In this type of parenting style, parents and children are actively collaborating. They're discussing consequences and guiding behavior. And there's also what I call reactive parenting. And I'm going to assure you that I'll discuss this at greater length a little bit later during this episode. And while there's merit to many parenting approaches, I believe strongly that purposeful parenting is like the ultimate sweet spot, at least for me. Purposeful parenting is not just about connecting or discipline. It's also about cultivating your children to embrace a growth mindset that will serve them through their lives. So purposeful parenting, asks this question: what kind of person do I want my child to become? What values do I want to instill? How do I want them to see themselves and their place in the world? And then every interaction, every teachable moment, every boundary you set is filtered through that purpose. And I think, for Black mothers, this is particularly powerful because we're not just raising children, we're raising Black children who have to navigate spaces and, our local communities, our state, our country, our world that will not always recognize their full humanity. Purposeful parenting means that we're intentionally building their confidence, resilience, sense of identity, and understanding of their own power, while also teaching them essential skills such as integrity and accountability. Now, when you parent purposefully, you're proactively shaping character. You're not just solving a problem in the moment, you're building tomorrow's leaders. So I thought about this when I was writing, and I said, I can remember when my daughter first started to walk. I watched her go from crawling to doing this scoot across the floor that was adorable, to finally standing on her own 2 feet and moving around. And sometimes when she walked, I noticed that she stumbled, and I had to catch myself because I initially wanted to grab her and kiss her whenever she fell. But I knew even in my early days as a mother that if I caught her and picked her up too often when she fell, I'd always be picking her up when she fell. So if she fell and she was walking within reason, I would let her fall and I would let her get herself up. And there were times that even though she couldn't speak, I would still speak to her and I would tell her, you got this, little mama, you can do this. Keep going. She's 11 now, and even with all the angst that preteens possess, when I watch her navigate spaces, I know that being firm yet affirming and letting her learn how to solve problems early on, right? Because learning what to do when you fall is solving a problem. That was the absolute right decision to make. So since I started talking about that story, I want to talk about how purposeful motherhood is so transformative, especially for us as entrepreneurs. Purposeful motherhood creates clarity. When you know your why as a mother, when you're clear on what you're building in your children, that same clarity can translate to your business. You become a woman who doesn't just hustle for the sake of hustling. You are building with intentionality. So, a few episodes ago, we talked about analysis paralysis. And purposeful motherhood also builds your decision-making muscle. Every day you're making choices about how to respond, what to prioritize, what battles to fight. And when we ask our children what is important to them, how to make decisions, we are adding introducing them to the process, which empowers them to begin making sound decisions. Now, this doesn't mean that I'm letting my 9-year-old make all of his own decisions, but maybe it means that I'm giving him the choice to make small decisions about things in his life so that he understands how to think things through and how to start to manage his ideas and his process for thinking things through. So that constant practice of intentional decision making, that's exactly what happens in entrepreneurship. That is a demand of entrepreneurship. It also develops your emotional intelligence, which we talk about a lot. When you're purposefully parenting, you're constantly reading situations, understanding motivations, managing your emotions and your children's. And so now, don't get me wrong, there are terrible moments of frustration, sometimes a scream or two coming from my home, but it is always followed by conversation, understanding, and a hug. Those same skills make you a better leader, a better negotiator, a better business owner. But here's what I think is most powerful. Purposeful motherhood makes you comfortable with being a confident leader. You know, as women, we are often socialized, even from when we're little girls, to be accommodating, to shrink ourselves, to not take up too much space. And when we act in this way, we are modeling this to our daughters, making them dim their light in public. And guess what? We are also sharing with our sons what should be expected from women, whether it is their mothers, a spouse, or even a coworker. And I'm sorry, but never sorry. Men don't need women to be silent. They don't need us to dim our lights. They don't need us to be accommodating for bad behavior. They need women in their families who won't coddle but will counsel them. And they need active partners who will hold them accountable and help them grow. Being silent will never allow that to happen. And so we have to kick that to the curb. Purposeful motherhood does that. Motherhood naturally, steps you into your authority. After all, from the moment our children are born, you have to make decisions, you have to set boundaries, and you have to stand firm in your convictions. When you embrace that authority or that natural leader in yourself that comes from motherhood, when you own your role as the one who guides and protects and shapes these little people, you develop a confidence that spills over into every area of your life. You become a woman who can walk into any room, any meeting, any negotiation, and know that you belong there. Purposeful motherhood also teaches you to think about the generations that will come after you. You're not just thinking about today or next week. You're thinking about the adult your child will become and laying the foundation for your children's children. That long-term thinking is crucial for entrepreneurship. You're building something that will outlast you, something that will impact not just your family, but your community. And now more than ever, we need to be thinking about what will impact not just our family, not operating in silo, but thinking about our community. And let's not forget, purposeful motherhood models entrepreneurship for your children. I think that's my central point that I'm always making. They see you operating with intention, when they see you building something meaningful, when they see you as a woman who creates rather than just consumes. You're showing them what's possible. You're raising the next generation of builders, creators, and leaders. That is powerful. And I think we always need to be thinking about our children in that way. So now that I've talked a lot about purposeful motherhood, why I feel it's so important, I want us to think about what happens when we don't show up purposefully and intentionally. We become reactive mothers who are responding in the moment, putting out small fires every moment of the day instead of focusing on the future. And I want to just unpack reactive parenting and motherhood so that we understand how it can hinder our growth as mothers and entrepreneurs. When we parent reactively instead of purposefully, we're constantly in survival mode. We're always responding to whatever is happening right now, and that keeps us all from building the foundation our children need. But not only that, it keeps us from building the foundation that we need as entrepreneurs. I remember talking to another mom recently who decided that she wanted to be a bit more purposeful as a parent. Like she wanted to stop leading with things like, I told you so, do this now, or here's what's going to happen next. And she did share that though she had great moments as a mother and as a business owner, she did feel that she was reactive in both spaces, that she was constantly putting out fires, finding a quick solution, responding to a crisis, but never thinking of the long game. And she was tired. But when she shifted her thinking around motherhood, her mindset and business also changed. Yes, she was still tired of telling her kids to pick up toys. I mean, I am always tired of telling my children to clean out the backseat of the car. But she was also making space to model behaviors she wanted them to emulate. She wanted them to be creative. She wanted them to think big. She wanted them to be able to execute projects and, of course, celebrate those wins in your life. When we parent like in an authoritarian way or reactive way, there's always a lot of chaos and fear. And chaos and fear are enemies of growth. When you're always putting out fires, when you're always yelling and spanking, you don't have the mental space to think strategically about your business. You can't plan, you can't innovate, you can't scale because you're always in crisis mode. And I've seen a lot of brilliant women who are stuck in this cycle. They're talented, they're capable, but they're always one tantrum away from their day falling apart. Their businesses suffer because they can't create the consistent and focused work that is needed. Reactive parenting also teaches our children that we're not in control. And I don't mean like control as control what they do, control over our lives, right? When we don't have a plan, who does? You know, children have to feel safe. They have to know that the adults in their lives have things handled. And we're always reacting, we're always scrambling, we're not providing that sense of security that they need. And here's the other part that really gets me. You know, when we don't show up as mothers with purpose, we're modeling inconsistency for our children. We're showing them that it's okay to be ruled by their emotions, by circumstances, and by whatever is happening around them. And we're not showing them how to solve problems. And then we wonder why they have problems and they're struggling with regulating their behaviors, why they can't focus, why they can't stick to their commitments. They need to see us doing it. In business, that translates into inconsistency in our work and in our messaging and in our follow through. Clients and customers, they want to know that they can expect great things from us and they need to trust that we'll show up the same way every time. And if we can't be consistent with our own children, how can we be consistent with our business? Reactive parenting is also a confidence robber. You know, when we're always feeling like we're failing, we're always feeling like we're one step ahead, we start to question our abilities. And, you know, that's when things like analysis paralysis and imposter syndrome get the best of us. We start to believe that maybe we're not cut out for this, not cut out for motherhood, not cut out for entrepreneurship. Let's be real, when you're not purposeful as mothers, we're not teaching our children about excellence. And I don't mean as in you win every time, but that you show up and you try. You use like failure as data for the next time. We're not showing them what it looks like to have standards, to have non-negotiables, to refuse to accept less than what they deserve. And if we're not modeling that form of excellence at home, we're not going to demand excellence from ourselves in business. All right, so here's the part I know you've been waiting for. I know you love my tips. So we're getting into it. How do we actually live this out? How do we become these purposeful women and mothers and entrepreneurs? You know, let me share some practical strategies that have been working for me that I'm constantly integrating into my life. And I have to tell you, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I brush myself off. I try again. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to define your family's core values. I want you to sit down, write out what matters most to you. Is it integrity? Is it some form of excellence? Define excellence and define success. You know, what does service look like to your community? What is resilience for your family? Once you know your values, you know, every decision that you make will be filtered through that lens. So when your child asks why they can't do something, you don't just say, because I said so. You connect it back to your values. A sentence like, we're telling the truth because we believe in the power of honesty, rings so much louder for kids, even if they don't really immediately listen to what you're saying. What you just said to them is in their bodies. It's in their minds. And that is bigger than saying, because I said so. Statements like, because I said so, give no room for understanding. And that's important. Our children need to understand why things happen. They can learn how to make decisions on their own, based on their own values. You know, the kind of statement that has maybe been in our families and has kind of set the stage does not always help them define who they are and what matters to them. Next, I want you to create systems and routines. And this is something that I'm working on, right? Purposeful doesn't mean rigid. You know, it does mean that you have procedures in place so that you can work successfully. So what does your morning routine look like? What are your non-negotiables as a mother? What are the rhythms that help your family function at its best? And these same systems of thinking will revolutionize your business. Third, I want you to practice proactive communication. And I know sometimes it's hard. You just want to shut down. You want everybody to leave you alone. I feel like that sometimes too. But instead of waiting for problems to arise, you know, we should be having regular check-ins with our children and with our spouses. Ask them about their day, their feelings, their challenges. That helps to develop relationship and gives you insight into what they need. And think about this, your business, that kind of proactiveness in communication leads to better client relationships, you know, or team culture, and staying ahead of issues before they become a crisis or a reason not to do business with you anymore. Fourth, I want you to model the behavior you want to see. If you want your children to be entrepreneurs, let them see you building. And I didn't realize that until, like I said in a previous podcast, that my daughter saw me working. She saw me online. She showed me to people. That has kind of fueled her need or want to be an entrepreneur. If you want them to be a problem solver, then you gotta let them see you working through challenges. If you want them to be confident, let them see you take risks and bounce back from failures. Fifth, I want you to create boundaries that protect your purpose. So that might mean saying no to an activity that doesn't align with your values. It might mean limiting screen time so that you to have conversations with each other. It might mean setting work hours that allow you to be present with your family. Like, I work when my children are in school. Every now and then I'll go downstairs once I bring them home to work, but for the most part, once they're home, they've got my time. Boundaries aren't necessarily restrictions. They're just protection for what matters most. I want you to invest in your own growth. And that's something I've really been working on this year. Get what you don't have. So you got to read or listen to books. Take some courses. Work with a coach in a way that you need. The more that you grow, the more you have to offer your children and your business. I want you to make learning a family value. And finally, I want you to trust this process. You know, I'm learning that purposeful parenting isn't about being perfect. I never, ever, from the moment I knew I was having a child, I never thought I would be perfect. But I always knew I would be somebody who thought about what they were doing and thought about their life. You know, mothers, we make mistakes. We have bad days. We're tired. All of that is okay. But what matters is that we keep stepping back up to the plate. We keep showing out with who we are, and we keep growing. So those are those tips. So listen, sis, the world needs what you're building, both in your children and in your business. And when you show up purposefully as a mother, you're not just raising your children, you're raising the next generation of leaders, innovators, and change makers. And I want you to think about that. It can show up in a lot of ways. Maybe they might not be on the cover of Black Enterprise or Entrepreneur, but maybe they're that person who's a community builder and they're helping other young people do things, or older people in the community, or people in transition. Those are all things that are powerful, and we have to teach our children how to stand up and be present in our lives, right? Your purposeful approach to motherhood It's preparing you as a woman for every challenge that you will face, especially in entrepreneurship. You're building skills, you're developing character, and you're creating a legacy that extends far beyond any business you will ever build. I want you to embrace your role as a Black mompreneur. Step into your authority, step into that leadership role, parent with purpose, and watch how it transforms not just your family, but your entire approach to business and life. Thank you so much for joining me today on For Black Mompreneurs. My name is Femi Lewis. Remember, you are not just building a business. You're building a legacy. And it starts with intentionality and the way you show up as a mother. Until next time, keep building, keep growing, and keep showing up purposefully. Peace.